Hello there. Philosophy Lessons continues. The second philosophy is hedonism. Hedonism is a philosophical and ethical approach that emphasizes the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain as the ultimate goal of human life. According to this philosophy, the greatest good is the greatest pleasure or happiness, and the greatest evil is the greatest pain or suffering. Hedonism can take different forms, such as psychological hedonism, which posits that people always act to maximize their pleasure, or ethical hedonism, which asserts that pleasure and happiness should be the ultimate criteria for moral behavior. While hedonism is often associated with excess and self-indulgence, some proponents argue that a balanced and rational pursuit of pleasure can lead to a fulfilling and virtuous life. Origins of hedonism philosophy. The origins of hedonism philosophy can be traced back to ancient Greece, where it was developed by philosophers such as Aristippus of Cyrene and Epicurus. Aristippus, a disciple of Socrates, believed that pleasure was the only good and pain the only evil, and that people should seek immediate pleasure and avoid immediate pain. He argued that pleasure could be found in physical sensations, but also in intellectual and social activities, as long as they brought joy. Epicurus, on the other hand, emphasized the importance of moderation and the avoidance of excess. He believed that pleasure was the absence of pain, and that the greatest pleasure came from a tranquil and simple life, free from anxiety and fear. He also taught that the gods did not interfere in human affairs and that death was nothing to be feared, as it meant the end of all sensation and therefore all pain. Later, during the Enlightenment, the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham developed a modern form of hedonism known as utilitarianism, which held that the goal of society should be to maximize pleasure and minimize pain for the greatest number of people. This philosophy has had a significant influence on ethical and political thought, as well as on psychology and economics. How hedonism philosophy can be applied in the modern world. Hedonism philosophy can be applied in the modern world in various ways, depending on the interpretation of the philosophy and the values of the individual. Here are a few examples. 1. Personal happiness. One can apply hedonism by focusing on personal happiness and well-being. This can involve prioritizing activities and experiences that bring joy and pleasure, while minimizing those that cause discomfort or pain. This could involve pursuing hobbies, socializing with friends, traveling, or engaging in physical activities. 2. Work-life balance. In modern society, many people experience stress and burnout due to excessive work demands. A hedonistic approach to work-life balance could involve prioritizing leisure time and pursuing activities that bring joy and relaxation, such as spending time with family, engaging in hobbies, or taking vacations. 3. Consumerism. Hedonism can also be applied to consumerism, which emphasizes the pursuit of material goods and experiences that bring pleasure. However, it is important to consider the environmental and social impact of consumer choices and to avoid excessive consumption that may harm oneself or others. 4. Ethical behavior. Ethical hedonism emphasizes that the pursuit of pleasure and happiness should not come at the expense of others. Therefore, one can apply hedonism by engaging in ethical behavior that promotes the well-being of oneself and others, such as volunteering, charitable giving, or advocating for social justice. It's important to note that a balanced and rational approach to hedonism is crucial for long-term happiness and fulfillment. Hedonism can be a valuable philosophy for guiding personal and societal decision-making, but it should not be pursued at the expense of long-term goals or the well-being of others. Hedonism oxymorons. There are some who believe that hedonism is an oxymoron because they see pleasure-seeking and moral virtue as incompatible. They argue that pleasure is fleeting and temporary, whereas moral values are timeless and enduring. Additionally, they believe that the pursuit of pleasure often leads to self-indulgence, which can be harmful to oneself and others. However, proponents of hedonism argue that pleasure-seeking can be compatible with moral values, such as compassion, fairness, and respect for others. They argue that the pursuit of pleasure can be done in a balanced and rational way that is consistent with moral values and does not harm oneself or others. They also point out that the avoidance of pain and suffering is a natural human desire, and that hedonism provides a way to achieve this goal. In essence, the debate around whether hedonism is an oxymoron or not ultimately comes down to differing philosophical and moral perspectives. While some see hedonism as inherently flawed, others believe that it can be a valuable philosophy for promoting personal happiness and ethical behavior. Why are humans conditioned to think pleasure and indulgence are bad things? The idea that pleasure and indulgence are bad things may be influenced by cultural and religious traditions that emphasize the importance of self-discipline, moderation, and self-control. In many cultures, virtues such as hard work, self-denial, and delayed gratification are highly valued, and excess and indulgence are viewed as signs of weakness or lack of self-control. Moreover, the negative connotations associated with pleasure and indulgence may also be rooted in evolutionary psychology. Our ancestors had to adapt to an environment where resources were scarce and the availability of food, shelter, and safety was unpredictable. In such an environment, the ability to delay gratification and exercise self-control was crucial for survival. Those who were able to resist the temptation to indulge in immediate pleasures were more likely to survive and pass on their genes to the next generation. However, it's important to note that not all cultures or individuals view pleasure and indulgence as negative. Some cultures celebrate pleasure, leisure, and enjoyment, and view these as important aspects of life. Additionally, many people today recognize the importance of self-care, relaxation, and enjoyment for their physical and mental well-being. Overall, the view of pleasure and indulgence as negative or positive is shaped by a complex interplay of cultural, social, and biological factors, and varies across individuals and societies. Similarities between Epicureanism and hedonism. Epicureanism and hedonism share some similarities, but there are also some important differences between the two philosophies. Here are a few similarities. 1. Emphasis on pleasure. Both Epicureanism and hedonism emphasize the pursuit of pleasure as a primary goal of human life. Both schools of thought recognize the importance of experiencing pleasure and avoiding pain. 2. Skepticism of conventional values. Both Epicureanism and hedonism challenge conventional values and beliefs that emphasize self-denial and self-sacrifice. Both schools of thought encourage individuals to pursue their own happiness and well-being, rather than conforming to societal expectations or norms. 3. Materialism. Both Epicureanism and hedonism have a materialistic worldview, emphasizing the importance of physical pleasure and the pleasures of the senses. They both reject the idea of a spiritual or metaphysical reality beyond the physical world. 4. Personal autonomy. Both Epicureanism and hedonism prioritize individual autonomy and the freedom to pursue one's own desires and interests. Despite these similarities, there are also some notable differences between the two philosophies. Epicureanism places greater emphasis on the importance of moderation, tranquility, and simplicity, while hedonism is often associated with excessive indulgence and pleasure-seeking. Additionally, Epicureanism emphasizes the importance of intellectual and emotional pleasures, such as the enjoyment of friendship and conversation, while hedonism is more focused on physical pleasures. Notable differences between Epicureanism and hedonism. Epicureanism and hedonism share some similarities, but there are also notable differences between the two philosophies. Here are a few key differences. 1. Attitude towards pleasure. While both Epicureanism and hedonism prioritize pleasure as a goal of human life, they differ in their attitudes towards pleasure. Epicureanism emphasizes the pursuit of pleasure in moderation and balance, whereas hedonism is often associated with excessive indulgence and pleasure-seeking. View of pain. Epicureanism views pain as a necessary evil to be avoided whenever possible, whereas hedonism sees pain as something to be avoided at all costs. 2. Approach to ethics. Epicureanism places a strong emphasis on virtue and ethics, with the belief that pleasure is best achieved through living a virtuous and moral life. In contrast, hedonism does not have a strong moral or ethical framework, with the focus being primarily on individual pleasure-seeking. 3. Role of friendship. Epicureanism places a strong emphasis on the importance of friendship and social relationships in achieving happiness, whereas hedonism is more individualistic and less concerned with social relationships. 4. Attitude towards material possessions. Epicureanism emphasizes the importance of simple living and avoiding excess material possessions, whereas hedonism is often associated with materialism and excessive consumption. Overall, Epicureanism and hedonism share a common interest in pleasure, but differ in their approach to achieving it and their broader philosophical frameworks. That's all we had time for, folks. Let us know how you feel about this philosophy by commenting. The third philosophy is up next.